Hey guys, you've heard of the Young Turks podcast because you're listening to it right now. But make sure that you subscribe and give it a 5-star rating if you like it. Thank you for listening. Drop it. All right, we've got the all-Mediterranean power panel for you guys again today. Francesca Fiorentini, Cenk Uygur, John Iadarola, Turk between two Italians.
Itals.
Right. Big day of news as always. It's a Friday though, and both Fridays and Mondays are crazy in the Trump world. Granted, every day is crazy, okay, but we do have Trump stories, but we also have Howard Schultz we're gonna get to in a second. We have AOC fighting back as usual, love it. Biden makes jokes. Is he allowed to make jokes?
I like jokes, generally.
No.
Okay.
No.
She's been known to tell a joke.
No, Biden, just stop.
Okay.
You're making it worse.
All
You're
right.
making it worse.
So that's later in the program, and that'll be interesting. And I think that there is a real cultural divide there, but not among Democrats and Republicans. I'll explain. So, and by the way, how's this for fun? On Monday, Lance Reddick's gonna be on the program. Lance, a well-known actor on The Wire and many other shows. I keep saying The Wire because I watched The Wire and I loved him on The Wire, and I'm so psyched that he's coming on. So that's great. A little bit later, we're gonna tell you that if you are a member of the Young Turks on YouTube, you get to have a John Iadarola emoji.
Have
That's a
an
thing.
emoji?
There's a John Iadarola emoji on the planet. Yes.
I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a great precipice. I was not involved in choosing this, and I think that's gonna come back to bite me.
Okay, well, let's see. Is it a bearded John? A no John? Is it Johnny Pie? Is it Johnny Tie? I don't know. There's only one way to find out. So if
What
you're watching,
form will my nightmare come in? Tell me, Gozar.
So if you're watching on YouTube, there's a join button. Okay, that's where you go and then there's an Anna one, me one, and then JR one. So that's super fun. Okay,
Wow.
check that
No
out.
previews. We have to see it then.
Yeah.
Once you become a member.
No, I think we're gonna preview it next week. Although if you're a Young Turks member on YouTube, you already have one. So. And it pops up on the live chat. So fun for everybody, and of course it also helps the Young Turks. So let's do it. We got a lot of stories. John, what do you got?
Okay, lot to get to. Let's start off with something fun. Howard Schultz has been sort of running for president for months now, and so you could be reasonably expected to think he's learned a lot, right? You can expect that if you want. We're gonna go through some videos of his appearance on Ali Velshi's show today on MSNBC, and I think he's still working on the strategy a little bit. First, here he is. They get into it on the economy and the position that Howard Schultz tries to establish for himself as an outsider who can fix our country's economic problems. And let's see if it works out for him.
A lot of Americans knew this a long time before you really rich guys started talking about how bifurcated America is. And that's where we are today. So do you get why some people don't really think that you've got all the answers, that you rich guys who are, I don't know who told you that America's bifurcated. Somebody came to you and told you that there's a problem because the rest of America's been living it.
I appreciate you calling me a rich guy, but I grew up in federal, I grew up in the
but now you're a really rich
yeah, but I'm self-made and I built a company that employed over 3 million people over the last 40 years and gave health care, ownership, and free college tuition to every employee.
But you get when you rich guys get into the bifurcation conversation that the rest of us have been having for decades.
Yeah, but this is about a lack of leadership and a government of two sides, Democrats and Republicans, who are unwilling to face the issues and solve America's problem. Why do we have a $22 trillion debt? Why do we have a healthcare crisis? Why do we have K through 12 that's not working? Why is our standing in the world not working? Because of both parties' ideology and unwilling to work together.
Oh.
Okay, so I wholeheartedly disagree with him, and I think his analysis is pretty much infantile. But before I get into that, I do want to be fair to him. His company is very progressive, and it does do all those things that he mentioned. So he has a good track record in that sense. And Ali Veshi's clearly trying to antagonize him by constantly calling him "you rich guys," and really, when you look at MSNBC and all cable news, they've been talking about, oh my God, the Republicans and Democrats have to work together for as long as I've been alive, and so now for them to be like shocked and chagrined when Howard Schultz is saying it is a little disingenuous. Now on to Schultz. He totally misunderstands the problem, and so does the great majority of politicians and almost every pundit on television. Oh, Democrats and Republicans can't get along, that's why we have a dead and a broken healthcare system. No, Democrats and Republicans are bribed by their political donors who stand to gain from that broken system. We have a broken healthcare system that costs twice as much as Canada and the rest of Europe and Japan. Why does it cost twice as much? Because it goes to the profits of the healthcare industry, specifically insurance, which then bribes the politicians legally in our system of government. That's why it's broken. It's not because Republicans and Democrats aren't having a beer together. It's a really, really shallow way of looking at the problem and not remotely true. Totally misdiagnoses it.
You could almost say it's because of you rich guys.
Yeah.
Which,
why are you calling him that?
At this point, let's get used to the fact that rich people and billionaires, if and when they are called rich people or billionaires, are hearing that as a racial slur. Like that's what they think.
Not racial, but they are definitely hearing it as a slur.
No, well,
like
in their mind,
that level
they're like,
of slur.
Right,
yes.
that we're a separate class, and like, how dare you discriminate? We've heard this before from billionaires, that you're discriminating against us.
When are the billionaires of this country ever going to catch a break?
Yeah, that's it.
I think that there are a few different layers that you could argue with Howard Schultz in terms of his analysis. You have attempted to argue with him on the substantive layer, which is unfair because that's not where he's at. But you're right about the substance. I would say that even if you were to engage him on his preferred territory, that this is all about personality and personal characteristics like leadership. And all we need is a leader who's not beholden to either of the parties to come in and talk it out and get people to, as you say, have a beer. That shows an incredible naivete about how disingenuous politicians in DC actually are. That he thinks the Republicans are just waiting for someone to reach out and bring them to the table to talk. Like even if you're forgetting, even if you don't know anything about campaign finance, and even if I didn't expect you to, the idea that Mitch McConnell just, he needs to be engaged in good faith on the issues that plague the American people. That is stupid. He's wrong on multiple layers.
Yeah, and I also think that, this idea that, of course, the amount of hubris it takes for someone who's never been in politics to say, I alone can fix it, which is essentially what Trump said, right? And I'm a billionaire, I'm self-made, because I'm rich, I am automatically proven with the American people, and I would argue that that is not, be a more progressive company, like Starbucks is not run democratically. It's not worker owned. It's not a cooperative. I'd be interested to know what Howard Schultz thinks about doing that with the workplace. But I will say that this whole idea that billionaires are good presidential candidates, you could point to Trump. But what Trump had was a vision, a plan, albeit hellfire and brimstone and complete xenophobia and like right-wing demagoguery, but it was a plan. Howard Schultz, bipartisanship is actually not a plan.
Yeah, and that is
it's not a
actually,
vision.
that's all that he has. Both sides have been wrong. And I, as an outsider, am looking and I get the whole, it's especially disingenuous for the only qualification he has given himself is that they're in the muck and he can bring people together because he's not in it. When, if you actually look at his platform, the little that he's revealed, and there is not much, in every case, it's kind of a weak, kind of centrist Democratic position. Right. That's all that he has. And the obvious response to that is, why are you not just running as a Democrat? Why? And we know why, because he doesn't think he has a chance in hell of actually winning in that race.
So, well, there's two things. One is that it's, again, the mainstream media here is being a little disingenuous, because if he was running as a Democrat, they'd be kissing his ass.
Oh, yeah.
That's possible, yeah.
Right, instead of being like, oh, you rich guys and stuff. And to be fair, Ali Veshi's pretty good on a couple of things. Sometimes that program is maddening. But they do challenge their guests in a way that's constructive, more so than other cable news does. But overall, MSNBC and the cable news, if he was running as a Democrat, we're like, oh my God, a wonderful centrist Democrat who's gonna bring people together. They're gonna bring people together. When is cable, CNN's mantra is bipartisanship. Right. By the way, also New York Times, Washington Post, almost all the mainstream media.
Yeah.
So it's not that they disagree with him on his substance or lack thereof. They've been pushing that lack of substance for 20 years now. It's that they don't like that he's an independent and might cost the Democratic Party. Let's keep it real. That's what they're not worried about. He's going to cost Trump. They're worried that he's going to cost those same centrist Democrats that almost every television pundit is.
Yeah, and of course he responds that there is no chance, no matter how well he does, that it would endanger either of the traditional party sides' chance of winning. He hasn't had time to Google Duverger's law or something, I guess. But we do have more from the interview. Why don't we go to the next video of Howard Schultz?
Why is Britain bifurcated? Why is France bifurcated? Why is Germany bifurcated? Why were the Arab countries bifurcated? It's not actually about Democrats and Republicans. It's about rich people who don't pay taxes, who don't understand that it's not about charity. It's actually about wealth distribution, right? If that's your explanation, why is Britain bifurcated?
We're now going to talk about what's going on.
No, but you're telling me that our bifurcation, economic bifurcation in America is because of Democrats and Republicans not agreeing on policies? Why is Britain bifurcated?
I'm talking about the lack of leadership and understanding of the fiscal responsibility of elected officials to do the right thing for the American people.
How many rich people in the world have the same wealth as the bottom 3.5 billion in society? Oxfam says it's 28. Under 10.
Listen,
on 28?
I didn't create the policies that we are now under. I'm here to tell you that I am looking at the current situation economically in this country, and if you want to solve the problems, you have to have the kind of leadership that cooperates with one another and is not steeped in ideology.
Okay. What does that even mean?
No, it's preposterous.
He doesn't have an ideology.
Yeah, so he says, I didn't create the problems of income inequality. What Veshi's saying is a very good point is, you're telling us that this is a distinct problem in America because the Republicans and Democrats can't get along. But why do we have the same problems in Britain, France, Saudi Arabia, et cetera, of tremendous wealth income inequality? Well, it's obviously not because the Republicans and Democrats, they don't exist in those countries. It's a different problem. You're misdiagnosing the problem. And then he says, well, I didn't create it in response to the rich guy thing. Okay, I know, but you're running for president. So what's your answer? I'm not charging that he created it. I'm asking you what your answer is if you're gonna run for president. You say, I'm gonna bring people together. Wrong answer. First of all, that's not a policy, not remotely a policy. Did you think it through or did you not think? Do you have a plan? Do you have a plan for how do you solve income inequality or healthcare or any of these other things? And then number two, come on. I mean, what this is an amalgamation of a guy who doesn't understand the current political landscape at all, and a bunch of consultants who are both Republicans and Democrats, and that's who he has. His political consultants are Obama and McCain, top advisors from the past, and they're getting paid a lot of money. And those guys are telling him, oh, America loves centrist establishment line of thinking that gives no answers at all. No, Washington loves that if you're in the Democratic or Republican Party, okay? The rest of the country pretty much hates it.
I think what you said earlier is really key. The fact that he's not running as a Democrat, he's running as a centrist independent, which are just two toxic words if you are anywhere from left of Republican to, progressive or radical. Like, oh yeah, we really hate centrists and we definitely hate independents. Like spoilers and anyone who's just sort of middling moderate. Like he's like showing up to the World Series and being like, hey, what about soccer, guys? You like, like what? No, that's not the game we're playing. But I also think that you're right, that Velshi would not, and John, you said in the break, I don't know if he's going to grill someone like Beto O'Rourke in the same way when he talks about bringing people together. This is what we've heard from Cory Booker. This is what we've heard from Beto O'Rourke. That's not a bad thing to want to bring people together, but you need to have an actual plan. That's not number one. Unfortunately, Trump has divided people with very specific policies.
And I'll go further than that. I don't want to come together with the national Republican leadership.
It's disingenuous,
right?
Completely.
So if you say to me, hey, there's Republicans in the country who actually want health care, and that's why Medicare for All polls at 70%, and man, they're dying out there. Do you want to work with them to get to the right place? Absolutely. If you say to me, there's a lot of Republicans who hate corruption, and they want to get, they want to get Soros money out. They're a little confused. They think it's mainly the Jews. Okay, all right. But no, seriously, whether it's good intent, bad intent, or whatever, are there a lot of Republicans who hate corruption? Yes, okay. Will I work with them to get money out of politics? Yes, absolutely. If you say to me, will you work with Mitch McConnell and the Republican leadership? My answer is Hell no, because there's a price to pay for that. It's not personal, and it's not that we're, oh, hey, we're divided and like he hurt my feelings. No, if Mitch McConnell works for his donors, so he's going to extract a price for a compromise. And the price is going to be, we're not gonna do real change, we're gonna do minuscule change. Basically a cover and keep things rolling just as they are. I do not want to engage in that negotiation. I want to defeat Mitch McConnell and the Republican Party. I want to crush them so that we can actually get the agenda, not of necessarily progressives, but the American people. Luckily, those two things are nearly identical because the polling on every issue indicates that we are not extreme. The progressives are moderate actually in this country. Bernie Sanders, if you look at the polling and what the country believes, is a moderate candidate. It's Washington, D.C. that is radical right wing. And I do not want to engage in a nonsense negotiation with radical right wingers and to give away the rights of American people.
Yeah. And I would argue that actually centrism and this kind of moderate middling, it is an ideology. It's an ideology of the status quo. It's an ideology of putting barriers and divisions between Americans where there are none, where they don't exist. It's dividing us apart by saying, well, some people are socialists and some people, love Trump. That's actually not the issues that we're facing. So I think that we have to be careful of this dangerous ideology of moderation and centrism that's leading us down the path of just, more money in our politics and not actual change.
Well, what do billionaires generally want? Not all of them. They're all different people, and some are wonderful and progressive, et cetera. But what do billionaires like Howard Schultz want? And the majority of them, unfortunately, they don't want to change anything because they love this system. Wrong or right, this system got them to be incredibly rich, incredibly powerful. So there's a reason why they want to protect the status quo because it's been brilliant for them. Now, for the rest of us, the status quo is terrible. And they literally, it's not that Howard Schultz is a bad guy at all. It's that he literally can't understand that. He's like, how could you not love the status quo? Look at all the wonderful things it did for me and everyone else I know, right? And so that's why he has no chance of winning. All he can connect to is his centrist consultants that are selling him a bill of goods that no other American is interested in. And by the way, it's ironic. The one good thing that Howard Schultz has done is he's united TYT and MSNBC in a sense. And only on this issue. Why? We can't stand that kind of status quo supporting centrist milquetoast, which MSNBC loves, but they can't stand an independent candidate. So you bring those things together. Right. That's why we're both against them, but for totally different reasons.
Yeah, he exists in a bubble of 100% unshakable privilege, economic privilege that he thinks. First of all, like you said, I don't want you to work with Mitch McConnell. I would say I don't want you to work with Mitch McConnell. I also think that if you think you can work with Mitch McConnell, I don't trust anything you say politically anymore because clearly you don't know what you're talking about. When you combine that with him coming into this race, apparently having not thought at all about what his platform should be on any issue, doing weird, condescending and patronizing things like saying, my immigration plan would be to bring Republicans and Democrats in a room and then put an empty chair down to represent the American people. That's one of the most insulting things that I've heard politically in my entire life. And to think on top of that you dwell apart, separate from ideology. Yeah. He was asked, he said, I don't think that the corporate tax rate should have been cut to what it was. And then he was asked, what should it be? And he's like, it should go up to 25%. If you think that, and you think that's not an ideological statement, that is because you have been so protected from any challenge whatsoever to your way of thinking that you think everybody also wants a de facto cut from a couple of years ago.
So the
whole thing is just a big insult.
So John's points are fantastic, and again, just does not understand the current political situation. But and that leads to what Francesca was saying as well. 35% was the corporate tax rate. It got brought down to 21% by Donald Trump. Now some want to move it back up to 25, not 35, 25%. And they say, well, you see, aren't I a decent, wonderful, centrist, non-ideological person? No, that is, to Francesca's point, that is a statement. That's a statement that you love the status quo. You think corporate taxes should have been deeply, deeply slashed because poor corporations in America couldn't catch a break. But Trump went just a little too far. And I think John made this point earlier. You know what Beto O'Rourke's position is? It is the same exact thing.
The 25.
In a debate with Ted Cruz, he said, oh no, they went too far. Corporate taxes have to go back up. And me and Anna, we were covering the debate. We were like, oh, okay, this is interesting. He's like, all the way up to 25%. And that's the same Beto O'Rourke, absolutely loved by the establishment media. Softball after softball. So Howard Schultz and him, what separates them? One is an independent, unacceptable. The other one is a centrist Democrat. Yes, right? The bottom line is the status quo is an ideology. And it is one that the American people do not agree with. And so we are called radicals when we are actually the great majority of the country.
Why don't we take our first break?
Yeah, let's do it. All right, when we come back, we've got not only more passion, but more facts. And I got an interesting idea on climate change.
Do something about it?
Yeah, well, look, I don't want to be ideological. All right, let's come right back.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of On the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Time to read members' comments. As usual, Turkosaurus Rex writes in.
Wow.
The only reason Howard Schultz is on TV is because he's super rich. Why is it considered sacrilege for a news host to point out how rich and how touchy he really is? So that's a fair question. Punk NATO says, if anything, Dems and Republicans get along too well. They have the same income streams. I think that is very true as well. Dr. Chaos MD says Schultz has it backwards. So we have $22 trillion debt because the establishment of both parties can agree on something, and that is massive tax cuts for the rich and corporations in addition to insane military spending. That is also true. And lastly, Thomas says, how would rich people paying their fair share in taxes help the national debt? As Howard Schultz. All right, awesome. John, what's next?
Okay, let's talk about some climate change. I want to hear what your big idea is.
Oh, hold on. Sorry. Speaking of the rich, I'm going to a Tax the Rich conference, and it is put together, ironically, by millionaires. So Patriotic Millionaires is doing it in Washington. And so it is on Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. Wow, okay, that's early. And I'm going to be moderating that panel, apparently, at a time I was not familiar with. Anyway, I was not aware of.
I love when you learn stuff in real time.
I know.
Wait, does this mean you are a millionaire?
No. The millionaires have brought me in to moderate a panel about taxing them more. Now, see, these are the guys.
That's great.
Are the exact opposite of Howard Schultz. So they're like, what are you doing? Tax me more, tax me more. So you can watch that at facebook.com/theyoungturks, facebook.com/theyoungturks on Wednesday at 8:30. By the way, if you ever wanna know where I am and how to watch this stuff, go to tyt.com/newsletter and we'll give you updates. So I'll be in a town, people are like, how come you never told me? That's because you're not getting the newsletter, okay? All right, sorry, John, go ahead now.
Oh, and I'm also gonna mention, just because I was told to do reads, and I don't have them in front of me, but there's an important thing I don't have a read for, but it's still like 2 weeks off, but very soon Game of Thrones season 8 is gonna come back. It is gonna be the last season of Game of Thrones. Also, coincidentally, the last season of our reviews of Game of Thrones.
Wow.
What were the chances? What a coincidence.
I know, it lined up really well this year. It doesn't always happen, but you should become a member because those are a lot of fun. You're not gonna wanna miss out.
Yeah, so we watch Game of Thrones and then we review it immediately after live. So don't miss that, tyt.com/live. And then of course, members get all of it anytime they want. That's tyt.com/join. All right, what's next?
Exactly, okay. Climate change's cost in the US continues to rise, this time with damage done to 2 military bases from extreme weather events. Last week, the Air Force announced that it was seeking $5 billion for repairs to 2 bases following recent extreme weather events. This is Tyndall and Nebraska's Offutt Air Force Base. Greg Brudnicki is the mayor of Panama City, Florida, where one of the bases is, and toured the base after the damage and said, it just looked like somebody went through and kicked down all the buildings. It looked like missiles came in and blew the place up. Now, a caveat that we always provide, no particular extreme weather event can be linked directly to climate change or have it be said that it would not have existed if not for climate change. But we do know that particularly with hurricanes, cyclones, and things like that, they are very strongly affected by the changing conditions produced through global climate change. And so the damage necessarily is going to be worse as a result. And this is just a preview of what's going to come. It's going to get worse every year out from now. And so let's talk a little bit about the effect of that damage and the money needing to be routed to these bases to repair them. Since money to make immediate repairs to the 2 bases came from other operating budgets, the Air Force is going to have to cut projects at 61 different bases in 18 different states and cancel nearly 20,000 pilot training hours to make up for the money that it already spent.
I hope they're not flying any Boeings.
Probably not. So look, that's a ton of damage. I mean, $5 billion as a percentage of our total defense budget is almost nothing, but objectively it's a lot of money. And that is only going to get worse. And the thing is, this isn't like we read this article and we're like shocked. Oh my God, did you know that this is gonna threaten our national security? Back in 2014, we reported on reports of how much of a national security threat climate change was going to be. US Defense Department understood it at the time, saying that climate change poses, quote, immediate risks to national security that will have broad and costly impacts on the way the US military carries out its missions. The DoD says that it's already begun to boost its resilience and ensure mission readiness is not compromised in the face of rising sea levels, increasing regularity of natural disasters, and food and water shortages in the developing world. So that's what they said in 2014, and I'm sure they've done everything they can to become more resilient, but tell that to the 2 bases that were laid low by extreme weather events that were contributed to by climate change.
I'm trying to think of how we rebrand climate change as like El Nino, but like El MS-13 Nino, so that we can trick Trump and his supporters into actually funding climate preparedness.
We got to keep El Nino out of this country.
Keep El Nino out of the United States. All the Ninos, right? Because they have like multiple Ninos. They're always coming to the States and just having more and more Ninos, little cyclones,
Yeah.
And so this is the way. If we can just Latinify.
Right. Yeah, no more anchor hurricanes.
Yeah.
And
every hurricane's got to have a Hispanic name for sure.
Yeah. And we need to build a wall. Well, no, that's not gonna work. Okay.
Build an umbrella. Build a giant umbrella.
Yeah. And yeah, maybe if you framed it that way, they'd be like, yeah, that does sound interesting. And in fact, so this story from Think Progress quotes Greg Brudnicki, the mayor of Panama City. And as they were going through the Tyndall Air Force Base, he said it looked like missiles came in and blew the place up. And so maybe if you framed it that way, like, oh wait, now I get it. Mm-hmm. Like bombs, I understand. Like, oh wait, is this like climate change bombing us? Mm-hmm. Then me hate climate change. Whatever it takes to get through a Republican skull, because science isn't working. 99% of the world's scientists are saying, what are you guys doing? The planet is in massive trouble, and they've shown how much money it's going to cost. You're like, oh no way, man! I heard there's a caravan coming though. That's really dangerous. Yeah. It came into Panama City, and it was like bombs, and it blew the place up. In essence, according to the mayor and the military officials there in Nebraska, it wiped out another military base. Why? Extreme changes in weather. First, a massive ice storm where they said there was ice the size of small cars. Then the weather gets really hot, well, relatively for that area, really warm, really quickly, And so it creates massive, unprecedented flooding.
Yeah.
Parts of Nebraska were 70% underwater in some counties. So look, when we talk logic, reason, and facts, the Republicans don't get it. So whatever we got to do to get through their thick skulls. Okay, now.
They deliberately don't understand it because it's not in the interest of the fossil fuel industry and it's not in the interest of business. And in fact, if we can sell more private contracts to the United States once all the sea level rise and the hurricanes and the forest fires, if we can privatize the response, hey, that's even more money for the same folks who've been dishing it out to us this entire time. I'm reminded of what AOC said when she was defending the Green New Deal, which is that either way, no matter if you pass something like this or not, we're paying for it. And you can see it here. We are going to be paying for climate change one way or another. I mean, with our lives, with our homes, with our families, but also with our budget. So either we prepare for it or we don't. And I think that, for me, I look at the bloated military budget and I'm like, what if a Bernie Sanders president or an Elizabeth Warren president or someone with more democratic socialist ideas or ideas to work for the people could redirect some of that military spending, help our military be prepared in terms of preparing the civilian populations, preparing their own bases. Like, maybe it wouldn't be that much of a stretch or a turn to kind of redirect those funds to actually helping us.
In fact, I have an idea along similar lines, Francesca. So this is gonna cost $5 billion. That's no joke, that's a lot of money. Just for 2 air bases, for every American taxpayer, really roughly, that's about $50. So you all have to take $50 out of your pocket and hand it over to fix these 2 air bases. But wait a minute, did you cause the problem? No, you didn't cause the problem. The fossil fuel industry caused the problem. Did you get any of their profits? I didn't get any of their profits, you didn't get any of their profits. So they privatized the gains and socialized the losses. I have a different idea. Why doesn't ExxonMobil and the oil companies pay the $5 billion? Hey, it's for our defense.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to be patriotic companies. That's what we hear all the time. Well, you guys caused the mess and you took the profits home, so why don't you pay the costs? Seems simple, seems fair. And if they don't do it, I guess they're against our national security.
We have a little bit on, so you were talking about like that people have a lot of misunderstandings about climate change. I can demonstrate one of the reasons they have those misunderstandings if you'd like.
Yes.
Do it.
So Tucker Carlson is one of the most popular hosts on Fox News. He has an audience theoretically of a few million people every single night. And on the mainstream media, including Fox News, climate change doesn't get talked about very much. And perhaps that's actually not the worst case scenario, because it turns out that when people like Tucker Carlson talk about climate change, it's actually less productive than silence. Here he is talking about a recent study that doesn't have anything to do with climate change, yet he is going to tie into climate change to make the researchers look like fools.
So what's to blame for this world-ending cataclysm? Well, a new research paper has the answer. It is, you're not going to be surprised, toxic masculinity. That's causing global warming. The paper argues that being environmentally conscious is a stereotypically feminine trait, so men, in response, assert their masculinity by deliberately destroying the environment and hogging the remote. They drive gas guzzlers, use plastic bags, they light things on fire. This is what men do. If we want to save the environment, we have to suppress men. It's like World War II, sort of.
Okay, so
I agree.
Can I say?
yeah, but he's obviously being a little bit sarcastic.
Yes.
That sounds great. Oh, right. Okay, no, that's a bad thing. We shouldn't suppress men.
Okay, so you're gonna be shocked to find out that the study didn't say any of those things.
No. So we're gonna break down all the ways that he has totally mischaracterized the study purposefully. But first, that's not the craziest, at least soundbite coming out of that particular episode of his show. He pivoted not long after to this.
But, I mean, how did we wind up with a country in which feminists do science? I mean, isn't that, you're sort of bound to get a study like this, right?
So that one doesn't take an actual study to explain how feminists are allowed to do science in the US. But AOC responded on Twitter by saying, democracy and civil rights is how we got a country where, quote, feminists do science. Also note how he's drumming up fear around women's rights to create suspicion around climate change policy. Tells you a lot. As if you needed to be told that again.
Men can be feminists. And I feel like he's just talking about women there.
Are they allowed to do science in that case?
How how do we get into this kind of dastardly situation where we also have women doing science? It was already bad enough when men were doing it.
They say we're fragile.
Yeah. How did we get to a society where half the country decided that they don't believe in science? That's a much better question.
Yeah, and you can probably find out how by watching Tucker Carlson.
Can I just say, Tucker Carlson, feminism is the only reason that women are separated from animals. Let me explain, all right? Feminism believes in equality. We believe in civil rights, all the feminist things. But if I weren't a feminist, I'd be crazy. I'd be nuts. I would wanna just cut off men's hoo-hoo and wear them around my neck and sell them on Etsy. That's what I would do if I weren't a feminist. But feminism reins us in. Just remember that.
Well, then I am thrilled that you're a feminist. But guys, think about it. I mean, do feminists argue that women should have extra rights that men don't have? No, they've never made that argument. And yet, if you watch Fox News, it makes it seem like these crazy, oh my God, they're trying to suppress men. They're suppressing men. Why? Because they want equal rights.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But for Tucker Carlson's of the world, that is suppression. They're like, now I gotta be equal to women? And I can't tell them to make me a sandwich and not go to work and just work for me and whatever my whims are. I'm being suppressed. Now they're doing science. They're doing science.
It takes quite a lot of ignorance to look at a story about climate change and it literally says there, 12 years to rein in climate change, and he's pointing a finger at women's rights. How you really think nothing of your audience. You think they are the lowest scum and that they deserve to die by climate change. We don't.
Yeah, so I guess the musicians played as the Titanic went down. As our country goes down, he's gonna stop women from entering STEM fields, I guess. So look, in general, I agree on his stance on feminism. Specifically though, what he was talking about had nothing to do with what he was talking about. So that new study that he had to respond to was published in 2016, so 3 years old. I have no idea how it came up on his show, but what it did was ask the question, why are men less likely than women to embrace environmentally friendly products and behaviors? And they argue that a green feminine stereotype may motivate men to avoid green behaviors in order to preserve a macho image. Now, he is going to try to make that about we cause climate change because of toxic masculinity, which of course they're not saying anything approaching that. What they're saying is, people try to make it seem as if you care about the environment, that's not a masculine thing. He would know something about that. That's what he and his network do on a daily basis. And they found that indeed, if you brand things in an environmental fashion, men will be less likely to consume those. You can take it up with people's consumer habits if you want. The scientists didn't look out for that. That's not what they wanted, but they did demonstrate it through science.
There is absolutely a caged polar bear in the Fox newsroom who just takes cans to the face. They're just like, boo, boo. They just take shots, instead of recycling, it's just into the polar bear, or the baby seal or whatever it is. Maybe it's just a dog. I don't know.
Makes you feel like a man.
Makes you feel like a man. Nothing like dunking on a polar bear or smacking it with your LaCroix can. Cenk, John, how do you feel does it feel especially feminine to recycle?
Well, so first of all, I'd like to note that polar bears are known for liking Coke. So they might actually appreciate what's happening there at Fox News. Second of all, I feel a little suppressed right now. So I mean, there's 2 guys and a woman on this panel, and that woman is just kind of oppressing us. She gets to be on the same panel as us. So obviously my rights have been taken away. So I just wanted to address all of that. And then in terms of what the study found, and to your question, Francesca, look, whether we think it's goofy or not, and I believe in recycling, and I believe that climate change is real and man-made, and I believe in 99% of the world's scientists. I know, call me crazy, and I think we should do something about it. But the facts indicate that men are more reluctant because they do find it to be more feminine. Now, that is based on the results of people. The scientists didn't make it up. I know in Fox News world, they think that they believe in this conspiracy theory where scientists get in a room and instead of actually doing science, they're like, what should we make up today? Oh, let's say it's men's fault. Okay, hey, that's a good one, right? That's a good one. All right, write it down. Men do not like green products, right? No, they go and ask people. They do science. I know Republicans are too stupid to understand science, but what you do is you ask people, they give you answers back. You tabulate the answers and go, oh, that's unfortunate. Turns out men think that it's more feminine to care about recycling. Maybe if we framed it in a way that it doesn't seem feminine, they would want to recycle more. And then Tucker Carlson comes on and goes, well, look at these chicks doing science. They're blaming men. Real men don't care about the world, okay? Real men say, here, planet, take this. Gee, I wonder how we got those results because of Neanderthals on Fox News doing propaganda like that.
And I just want to close the circle because I asked sort of a rhetorical question earlier. It might have sounded like a rhetorical question. Why is he talking about a 3-year-old study like this? And it might seem weird if you don't pay attention to what he's been talking about recently, but there is a reason, and it has to do with their suggestion. So Aaron Brow, who was the study author, said, we need to overcome our unhealthy judgments of gender incongruence, and men need to be confident in their self-identity and decide to live a sustainable lifestyle without caring what other people think. So first of all, in a general sense, Tucker Carlson does not want men to be secure in their masculinity and do what they want without thinking about what other people think. He wants them to constantly be scared and be reassured that they're men by watching his program. But specifically, I believe the reason he talked about this study was because just a couple of days ago, a man, Chris Hayes, had a town hall with AOC about the environment.
Right.
And he attacked him as saying, this is what all men will be if the feminists get their way. So he is literally
they will be laid. There is nothing sexier than a man who, and if you're a straight woman or if you're into men, I don't care who you are, there is nothing sexier than a guy who recycles, who composts, who brings his own Tupperware to work and cleans it out in the work sink. That's a man you can have babies with. That is a man who wants to preserve this earth. Hell yeah.
Yeah, no, that's why women all across the country are screaming, I'm composting.
Do you think you want to have babies with a guy who's just burning trash in the yard? You can't do that. That's good. You're going to kill off the planet. That's not a safe nest for us. Or the nest is on fire. That's great. No.
Okay. So look, last thing. I once worked with a producer who worked at Fox News, and he said that they don't particularly, like when they were planning the shows, they didn't care that much about the news of the day. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? And because in cable news, the producers move around a lot. They'll go to Fox News, and then one of them worked with me at MSNBC and CNN, et cetera, et cetera. So they said they care about cultural issues, and they're trying to make a cultural case every day rather than talking about the news. And that answers John's question. So why bring up a study that's 3 years old as part of your news program? Because you don't care about the news, you care about culture. And what you're trying to do is blame women and say to men, hey, if you were a real man, you wouldn't care about climate change and you wouldn't care about the planet, you'd only care about yourself. That's what real men do. And the older men who watch Tucker Carlson are like, yes. And they eat that up. They're like, I knew there was a good reason why I was a selfish bastard, right? I've been selfish my whole life, and I tell people that I throw bootstraps at them, and I say, I don't care about community, and that sounds socialist to me. I don't care about anybody else. I don't care about the planet. And then you watch Tucker, and he tells you, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right, you shouldn't care about the planet. You shouldn't care about anything. And women are here to oppress you with their science. And they feel good. And that's why Tucker has good ratings and Fox News has big ratings, because he makes the angry white men that are older that watch him feel so good about themselves. Well, I knew it. I knew there was something up. It's a feminist plot to oppress me by saving the planet.
Yep.
Bring me another beer, babe.
Yep. So now we're gonna take a quick break. We've got more. Buttigieg. All right, let's see if we can get to Buttigieg. Let's take a quick break.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
We'll be right back. We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free section. All right, back on the Young Turks, guys. I got to read a lot of your comments because they're all so good. Joe writes in from the member section. Let me just say, I really like this power panel. Let's have them on more. Okay, thank you. We appreciate it. We have a lot of lovely power panels for you guys. But thank you. Turkosaurus Rex says we need a complete ban on all weather until we figure out just what the hell's going on.
Move to LA. Like a dinosaur.
There you go. Lord Makala writes in, as a stay-at-home trophy husband, I've got to say that feminism and being a lover of feminism has really worked out for this guy. Okay. And Thomas says believing 99% of climate scientists sounds a little radical, Cenk. Okay. Cabbage on Twitter has an interesting point, and Republicans, please pay attention. He says climate change is Muslim.
I think instead of extreme weather events, it should be radical wind. I think that might win over some of them.
We're going to get to that in a second.
But I mean, again, and I made a joke earlier. We shouldn't racialize climate change. That is a clear joke. But the thing is that, again, let's understand that. But the idea that like this is our moment this is like our Independence Day when all of the alien crafts pull over Earth and we're like, oops, guess we all have to unite. Like it's a beautiful opportunity to come together and actually transform our economy, our communities, and our political system, climate change, right? So like, again, I think that even liberals, we hold ourselves back because we are afraid to change our lifestyles. We are afraid to like bring our own Tupperware to takeout restaurants. I totally do that. I look ridiculous. But we're afraid of these broader changes, and I think it's an awesome challenge, and I would echo what AOC is saying, that this country's been built and this world has been built on setting these impossible goals and really reaching for them and making them happen, transforming the world.
The only thing I disagree with is it's climate change. Okay, so
what?
It's climate change.
Climate change?
Yes, make it Muslim. Make it Muslim. Okay,
climate change. So you want to back to?
All right. So the Alex G Go 9 writes in, oh, Tucker Carlson, if you actually had a feminist friend, you'd have a better haircut. Forrest to Mintoro writes in, I want to give all today's props to whoever's doing the snarky banners on the bottom of the screen. Okay, nice job, production team. Greedy Bastard says the centrist, this is on YouTube Super Chat now, the centrists have no idea what's going to hit them in 2020, and I like it that way. Francesca and I were just having a conversation about that during the break. Man, they're starting to catch on there. They're like, I think Bernie might be the front runner. They really thought he was gonna fade. They thought he was gonna fade. Oh God, they're so funny. All right, last one. Casey O'Connell says, can we have Trump put windmills at the border and just tell him that it will give the immigrants noise cancer? Look, you don't even need a wall. Put the windmills in. It keeps them out and gives them noise cancer.
Oh, jeez.
All right.
Oh, I want to respond to one comment as well. We got a tweet from Noemi Sparks who seemed suspicious that in that last conversation, neither Cenk nor I explicitly labeled ourselves as feminists and asked if we are. Of course I consider myself feminist. I've said it many times, I just didn't say it in that clip.
Yeah, I mean.
But thank you for tweeting to us.
If you say so. Yeah, of course. course.
You better be clear because she will put a new product on Etsy.
Ready? Ooh, my store is gonna be popping.
By the way, look, I lived through this. I learned what feminism is through being wrong, right? Remember, I was a Republican, and I remember I wrote an article, the Daily Pennsylvanian. Oh boy, and the Daily Pennsylvanian at Penn.
Okay, right.
And someone responded. Feminist Uygur was the title of the letter to the editor, and explaining why, hey Cenk, you don't know it, but you're actually a feminist. And I was like, oh right, all right. And I was wearing a bow tie. I wasn't wearing a bow tie, but I eventually realized. I eventually realized all it means is you think women should have equal rights. That's not that complicated, and that's not that hard. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to point out everything you said is right there. We are living under tyranny right now. Ever since they got the power to alter these dynamically, I never know what's gonna happen. And I'm really worried I'm about to be targeted by it.
Okay.
It's a scary time to live.
Way to invite that attack on you.
By the way, Cenk, I think your line needs to be, I was a Republican, but I got better.
Yeah, that's true.
You've been coming up with jingles all day. We'll have come out during the break. All right, John, what's
okay,
this?
let's have some fun. Mayor Poop.
I was really worried where John's going with this.
I was really worried about pronouncing his last name, so I gave up on the first name altogether. Okay, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, he entered the Democratic primary not that long ago, and when he did, I don't think a lot of people across the country knew who he was, but we're like a month into his candidacy, and already it looks like a number of media outlets have fallen in love. So let's have a conversation about his candidacy. To give you an idea of what I mean, we've taken the headlines of a few articles recently. Why Pete Buttigieg is having a 2020 moment from CNN. Pete Buttigieg is having his moment from the National Review. So they got CNN and the National Review. Why you love Mayor Pete from the New York Times. That's a fun one.
I love that one. No New York Times. It's why you love Mayor Pete.
See, who is Pete Buttigieg? The gay millennial mayor the Democrats didn't see coming from Vogue. Pete Buttigieg's favorite book is Ulysses, and that's great. That's a weird, I want to read that one actually. After Obama, Democrats need a new theory of change. Pete Buttigieg thinks he's got it from Vox. And is Pete Buttigieg a transformational candidate from New York Magazine? So there's actually quite a bit of thematic overlap between outlets you wouldn't necessarily normally categorize together about him. And all of those, it's only been a few weeks.
What Pete Buttigieg can do for your skin.
But to be fair, they wrote very similar articles about Bernie Sanders. Why you love Bernie Sanders by the New York Times. Right, that didn't happen.
Yeah, they should do that. And so what's interesting about this is that, look, he's had a town hall, and I watched his town hall. I thought he was fine on most issues. I disagree with him significantly on a couple of the most important ones, but it was fine, he was interesting. But there's a lot of candidates in the race right now for so many different outlets to seemingly all coalesce around one, when as of right now, he's at 2.3% in Real Clear Politics average of recent 2020 Democratic primary polls, placing him in 7th place.
He's got Joe Mentum.
He's got Joe Mentum, he's got Pete Mentum. So look, 7th place in this primary means something because there's like 35 people running, but that's still 2.3%. And they seem to be getting ahead of themselves just a little bit, I think. Including, by the way, I just want to read one more graphic. So Chris Cillizza got quite a bit of strike back from this tweet. The $20 million for Harris makes Buttigieg's $7 million look that much better. People are not a fan of that tweet necessarily. So why do you think it is that out of all of the candidates, I mean, we could be in a Hickenlooper moment or an Inslee moment or whatever. There's so many, but so many of the media outlets seem to be coalescing around him.
Can I just time out and say we just got done talking about climate change and the $5 million, which is a lot to repair a couple of military bases. But now we see these numbers like 12 million and 7 million, and even a Bernie Sanders campaign. I can't believe it's 2019 and we still don't have publicly funded elections, and we're still raising millions and millions of dollars to run candidates, to get them onto these town halls on major mainstream news corporations that are still privately funded, fossil fuel industries, and that's
frustrating.
That all this money, what happens when they all lose? Where does it go?
So
what could we have done with it? So anyway, I just want to preface that.
Yeah. But that actually goes to the heart of the Pete Buttigieg conversation, because Bernie Sanders is raising it from small donors, but Buttigieg and a lot of others are getting bigger donors, and so they have to walk a different line. So Buttigieg, I think, is a really talented politician, and so to answer John's question, I think that's where it's coming from. He is really smart, has these like, and I'll join the rest of the media in going over the top, and then I'll tell you, what the real issues are. It has this superhero moments, right? Where there'll be a symphony playing, and then they'll zoom out, and it'll be Pete Buttigieg playing the piano. You're like, what? Right?
I didn't see that.
Yeah, so on his the other day he was at work and he only had like 15 minutes, and somebody came by and said, "Oh, we're about to have a C-section, have our first kid, but we're not married. Could you marry us?" He marries them outside the bathroom or wherever he did it, right? And you're like, whoa. He liked a book a lot, so he learned Norwegian to read it. There was a moment in a hospital in South Bend where they had this Persian family and nobody knew how to speak to them. And all of a sudden a guy shows up and speaks to them and translates for an hour so he can get medical attention. They're like, "When did you start working at the hospital?" He's like, "I didn't, I'm Mayor Pete." So like these amazing, amazing stories about Buttigieg, and it's hard not to be enraptured by that, especially if you're the mainstream press. But the reality of it is, who cares, right? And here's what I mean by that. I love that he speaks Norwegian. I love that, and Persian and 7 languages overall. I love that he's smart. He went to Harvard. He's a Rhodes Scholar. He's an Afghan veteran. He got 7-month unpaid leave from being mayor to go serve in Afghanistan because he's in the Naval Reserve. And so
seems a bit selfish.
Okay, so yes, those attributes are wonderful, and God, it'd be great to have a smart president again. But what are your policies?
Yeah.
What are your policies? And so that gets to Francesca's point. He walks the line and he does a great job of walking the line. I think he's even better than Obama. Having now watched them a lot, I spent a good deal of time watching Buttigieg tape, okay? Like some people watch film tape, I watch political tape. That's my film tape.
Buddha tape.
Yeah, and no, I even watched how to pronounce his name in 3 different ways.
Oh, okay, right.
So,
in Norwegian?
And I learned Norwegian to pronounce his name. No, okay. And so what he does is he says, "Oh, I'm for change and it's important to this country's in transformation, etc. Now I'm for Medicare for all, but we're gonna find a way to get there. And we're not gonna get rid of private insurance." What? Wait, hold on. What did you just say? Well, then you're not for Medicare for all. Yes, I am eventually. Oh, so you're not for Medicare for all now? Eventually, he said, "Well, I'm for a public option."
That's what he's in favor of.
No, you're in favor of a public option. That's okay. Don't say Medicare for all. But what he's doing is reflecting back onto you what you want to hear. So if you wanted to hear Medicare for all, you heard it. If you wanted to hear public option, you heard it. If you wanted to hear I'm not getting rid of private insurance, you heard it, right? And he does it in such a way that I had to pause the tape several times to be like, what did he just say, right? And if you rewind the tape and watch it again, it's actually empty. And he could be a great politician and policy person and a great statesman, but we don't know yet because he won't tell us. That was actually a rare situation on Medicare for All where Stephanopoulos pressed them, and that's why we got, and great job by Stephanopoulos to do a number of follow-up questions to actually get to some policy position. But 9 out of 10 times he does not state a policy position, it's on purpose. So why did I say it's in relation to what Francesca mentioned? It's the reason he's not telling you policy positions is not just to appeal to voters, but to appeal to donors. Hey, don't worry, donors, I'm not getting rid of private insurance. Hey, don't worry, voters, I'm for Medicare for all. I'd like to have my cake and eat it too, in Norwegian. So that's Pete Buttigieg so far. Maybe he gets better, maybe he starts to explain his policies more, but for now, it's a little empty, and that's why the mainstream media loves him. On the surface, the Rhodes Scholar and all those amazing stories are perfect, with no threatening substance behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I think the approach is a little bit similar to some of the immediate coverage of Beto O'Rourke's candidacy. That it's like young, dynamic person, speaks with a lot of passion, seems really confident, has an interesting personal background and history, cool hobbies and everything, and you can kind of hear what you want, at least now. One came through Congress, one came through being a mayor, a little bit different. And I get sort of the strategy that there's so many candidates right now, just keep your head down a little bit, maybe let it get weeded out just a little bit. But the problem is that at some point you're gonna have to appeal to either the progressives voters or the more centrist voters. And there's already a couple of, like he's number 7th. 1 through 6 includes a couple progressives, a couple centrists. And so can you really afford to not actually differentiate yourselves from any of them for more than a month, more than 3 months, 6 months? How long can you actually do that? How many debates are you gonna get through before we know either who you are or that you're no one?
I will also say, just on the surface, I don't think that you can fight fire with Chopin and Norwegian. Sorry, like we're in a fire moment right now, and we need an extinguisher, not someone who's just gonna be like, I was a Rhodes Scholar. Doesn't cut it. You need actual plan, and you need to be specific on it.
Yeah.
So,
we're in a fire moment, not a Buttigieg moment, and so the mainstream media can't wrap their heads around it because they all think the status quo is wonderful. And if you think the status quo is wonderful, well, a bright young mayor out of South Bend might be the ticket for you. You might think, well, I just want to get back to sanity, and so. And look, let me be fair to him on that too. They say, well, the main problem is he lacks a lot of experience. He's mayor of South Bend. Trump lacks all experience in life, right? And so I don't think that's the issue at all. They also then are like, yes, but he's from the heartland. I don't care. People from California are also Americans, and so are people from New York and Rhode Island and Hawaii. Oh, but he's from Indiana. Who cares? Don't hold it against him, and don't hold it as some sort of badge of honor where he was born and where he happens to be mayor. We're all willing to give him a perfectly fair chance, but he's got to tell us what he would do if he became president. Otherwise, not remotely interested.
Yeah, and we're still more than a month out, like a couple months out from the first debates, and we're gonna have 1,000. So a lot can happen, but I personally am not going to wait until we're already in the thick of the debates if the narrative is already being set by some of the biggest media outlets in the country. We can adapt. Like if he comes out and he's awesome in the debates, he's very specific, and he puts out a bunch of Elizabeth Warren inspired, super specific, awesome, radical proposals, great, we'll update our evaluations then. But we are paying attention now too.
Yeah, and one more thing that cuts both ways. He did have a great essay that he won a contest on back in 2000 about a profile in courage. You know who he wrote it about? Bernie Sanders. So that goes in a lot of directions. All right, guys. Thank you, everybody. Hey, everybody, check out the Bitchuation Room.
yes.
Okay, and that's of course Francesca's podcast and the Damage Report. If you're a member, you can watch the video of that live every day. tyt.com/join to become a member. If you want to watch some free clips of Damage Report, facebook.com/The Damage Report TYT, where John is killing it. Okay, we'll be right back. Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.